But I'm going to take you to this little place owned by this guy whose sons make their own olive oil, and we're going to talk to him and what life is like raising these sons, and we're going to have some of his meat and his cheese and have a glass of wine and kind of do a little trail like that through Florence. And we're going to have a dessert, we're going to have a coffee, we're going to have a panino, we're going to have some pizza. And my tours, and even in Dublin as well, is more about the people and their stories, and small businesses with big hearts is kind of the most important thing to me.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm joined by Laura, who is also known as Lo on the Road, who runs food tours in Dublin and Florence. Laura was born and raised in Canada, but travelled solo to Europe 15 years ago to become a nanny, despite never being on a plane before, and she's still in Europe. And she grew up in the restaurant business in Canada, used to own a cafe in Dublin, and has led food tours in Tuscany too. So today we're going to hear about Laura's journey, why she travels solo, her experiences of running a tour and a cafe, and also some current details of what she's up to now with her current tours. Laura, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm good. James, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. Not too bad. Tell our listeners where you are right now.
I'm at home in Dublin. Yeah, just chilling in my apartment. This is where my stomping grounds are for the time being.
Is that what is proper home for you now, Dublin?
It's funny because, you know, when I'm away from Dublin, I refer to it as home. And when I'm here, I actually usually refer to Canada as home. But I suppose when I say home, I mean physically in my flat. So, yeah.
And we go back to the backstory of some of our guests. So, as I mentioned in the intro, you're from Canada. So whereabouts in Canada did you grow up? And what were your early memories of any travel that you might have done early doors?
So I'm from British Columbia, way north BC. So if you go to Vancouver and you're driving in a car, you drive north for about 9 hours, like until there's a whole lot of nothing, trees, animals. Maybe you don't even see a person for an hour or so. And my father's Sicilian, and he moved there in the 70s to start a logging company. So that's why we ended up all the way over there. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because as a child, we didn't really travel because we owned the restaurant. The restaurant was kind of priority number one. And my parents never would have left staff to look after the place. So going on a holiday meant closing the restaurant for a week. So as a child, we did go on vacation now and then, but just little trips to Vancouver, trips to the Okanagan. But I didn't really start kind of traveling until I was an adult and did it on my own. But because my parents are both Italian, I always did want to go see Italy, know there was a bigger world out there, and definitely had my mind on coming to Europe since I was a child. But we didn't do it as children, unfortunately.
That's quite interesting that your father's from Sicily and going to northern BC. That's a heck of a change, isn't it?
Yeah, and every year in September, he'd be like, winter's coming. I'm like, Jon Snow, it's not here yet. Don't worry. We still have a little while. But he never got used to the cold winters, unfortunately.
Right. It's tough, right? It's tough up there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And for BC, so you're like way north. I'm thinking if you're in a quite remote place as a restaurant, is it one of those situations where like you're the only restaurant sort of in town or in the village that you're in?
Yeah, so there's definitely places where we had one cinema, one Dairy Queen, one McDonald's, but we definitely had lots of restaurants. For the small town that we were, there were lots of restaurants, and we were the only Italian restaurant aside from, you know, maybe a pizza takeaway here and there, sure. But definitely earned the spot of being, you know, one of the most popular and best restaurants in town, really kept the quality up, had a great reputation for 40 years, and that was definitely earned, and not just because we were one of the only restaurants, but because we were, you know, one of the best restaurants.
Of course, yeah. Well,
yeah.
if you've got a Sicilian cooking Italian food, I think that's a game changer, right?
100%, absolutely.
And I guess your mum is from BC or Canada.
Actually, my mom's Italian.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, my mom's from Calabria, but they actually met in Canada. They met in Canada after they had both moved there by coincidence, ended up in a small town and met there.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, because back in the 70s, it's like if you move to a small town and you're from a country, you make a community with all the people there
Yeah,
from your country. And so that's kind of just, yeah, what happened.
that's mental. When I was living in Kitsilano, so that's a part of Vancouver,
Yeah.
which is quite nice actually. Just below on
Beautiful.
our building block, there was a couple of Italian guys. I think they were probably quite new from Italy, and they set up a
Hmm.
cafe, and I think they've stayed now, and they're kind of giving that restaurant cafe thing a go. They're called Casa Recchio, and it looks like quite a nice
Beautiful.
cafe, like home cooked Italian food. They've got Italian chefs in there. So they're kind of staying
Mm.
here and giving that a go and just looked always good. Like the croissants, the pastries were amazing, as well as the hot
Oh
food.
man.
Oh,
The pastries will get you. Italian pastries will get you.
just
Yes,
so
that's my
good.
siren song. It's Italian pastries.
And they're funny guys, right? They're well into it. But yeah, you kind of read
Yeah.
and also listen to on podcasts about this interesting moment we're in right now where a lot of Canadians are trying to go to Europe. And I guess you've got some
Yeah.
Europeans coming here, which is we're all swapping over. It's quite an interesting time.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember there being a meme saying, like, my father left a small fishing village in Europe to come to Canada. And now all I'm trying to do is get back to a fishing village in Europe, which is,
Yeah.
what I was doing, in my 20s. So I completely understand it.
I kind of weighed this up, right? Because I've seen that meme before as well. I think I saw one in Argentina about they're all trying to go back to Italy, right? Because a lot of Italians went to
Yeah.
Argentina. I just wonder, I don't know if it's unfair or not, but back in the day, they're obviously trying to elevate themselves socially, right? But that's kind of driven by money, maybe. And they probably had a
Absolutely.
good opportunity to come here or Argentina to make some money, right? And then I
Hmm.
guess maybe in the Canadian standards, it's gone like a bit weird because it's so expensive here. So they're kind of looking for that lifestyle option now where here it's expensive, you need to earn a lot of money, very Americanized type of working conditions in a normal job. But like in Argentina, I guess they're like, oh, well, the economy is not great. So let's go back to Italy and see if we can do something there. It's just weird how it swaps over, but there's different
Yeah.
reasons for going back.
It's funny because you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. The immigrants like my parents in the 70s came over here, yeah, for opportunity, especially my dad and his brother. Sicily in the 70s was not a great place to
Mm,
be. So they came here, found an opportunity, built a business where there wasn't really a booming business up north where people didn't want to be living. It was too cold. And so they came over and they did that. And then, yeah, I think the appeal of going back to Europe is the slow living of it and not having to do the whole grind. But I think people really romanticize Europe, especially Italy.
yeah,
Because when you go and you spend time in Italy, you see, no, people still do go to work every day. And it's not just, drinking in a piazza. Or actually, the Italians don't even do that in fairness, but it's not just hanging out in a piazza and drinking your wine and whatever. People have lives. But even if they do go to work every day and do their thing, it is still a much slower lifestyle, and they can appreciate the little things much more than we do back at home in North America. And so I can see the appeal of both sides. And now with the prices being crazy in Canada, it's like, oh, people say, will you go back to Canada? And I'm like, I think I've been priced out of Canada, but I'm
yeah,
not
of course.
sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. Yeah.
And we're in this like space now where people can work online. So if you can earn
Oh
Canadian or American
yeah.
dollars, where it's quite expensive in these countries, America maybe not so bad. I'm not really sure, different state to state. But if you can earn American dollars at the same sort of rate, but then living in Italy or Spain or Portugal, I can see why Canadians are going that way because it goes further, right?
Yeah, the only downside is Americans, when they come abroad, they still have to pay taxes to America, even though they're
Yes.
not living there, which
Yeah. Crazy, isn't
that
it?
sucks for them. Yeah. Yeah, that's insane, but
Yeah. Unbelievable that. I think I know a few people with
yeah.
passports, they have to submit tax returns every year, right? It's crazy.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And for you, you mentioned that you're interested in travel, maybe because your parents migrated. Was there any trips in BC that maybe got it really going? Like I don't know, you went to Vancouver or to Okanagan. Was there any particular trip, or were you just kind of waiting for that adulthood where you can go a bit further and explore on your own?
It's always like, yeah, you want to, explore Canada. There's so much of it. It's so huge. But it really, for me, I knew that there was a bigger world out there. And I think that having your parents speak another language and come from another country and raise you in a way that wasn't 100%, Italian or 100% Canadian, you always felt kind of a little bit here and a little bit there. My idea was that I would always go to Europe. And I was really waiting for that to happen. And like I said, my parents didn't take us, so I knew that it was something I was going to have to make happen. But I did not think that my life would take the direction that that it has. I didn't think I would be living here, long term. I certainly did not think I'd be living in Ireland. So it was just the want to go and kind of feel a little bit European, which I had growing up, but also feeling Canadian, half and half, and kind of wanting to find where I belonged in the world and knowing, yes, my goal at one point is to live abroad. But like I said, did not know after that how long or where or what I'd be doing. So it was a little mystery to me for sure.
And did you get the Italian passport as well?
I did, and I wasn't born with it. I was born with the rights to it, but
Yeah.
I actually got it after I moved to Italy, and it's my most prized possession. It's something that I wanted, I think, the most in my life. It's the one thing I've wanted the most in my life, and that includes like opening businesses and everything that I've done in my life. Getting my passport was the thing I wanted the most, and I'm never like, you will never take it out of my hands. It's my number one thing. So yeah, and that's obviously made life a lot easier for me. I have siblings who didn't get it because they
Uh,
didn't, they weren't interested or they didn't do the work to get it. And so it's crazy being able to just kind of go live wherever in Europe. And when I meet my clients, that's the first thing they ask me is, how are you able to stay in Europe?
yeah.
Looking for some sort of loophole or some sort of way. And I'm like, I have the passport, which opens so many doors and makes things so much easier.
Yeah, I think as Brits, I think we're in that space now trying to get a European passport, especially ones that did not vote for Brexit, right? So they're trying to
Oh,
Ireland's a
yes.
classic place because a lot of people obviously have Irish heritage. Unfortunately, I don't have any, so I'm stuck. So I'm getting a Canadian
But,
passport, but it doesn't really change anything. But hey,
well, actually, I don't know, James, if you know, there's free movement between the UK and Ireland. So your UK passport would allow you to like live in Ireland if that's an interest to you. But yeah, for the rest of the EU, it doesn't really help, unfortunately.
so I can go to Ireland and I've got to stay
Yes.
there, whatever the rules are for how long to get their passport. Then I'm
Yeah,
in.
you'd have to come and be here for 7 years. Sorry.
Oh, okay, right. To get the Irish passport,
Yeah.
that's the dream scenario now, right? Because
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah,
any
yeah.
EU passport really. I don't know what the easiest one is to
Absolutely.
get, but that's the kind of the next step if you want to have that free movement of travel.
I think if you're in the UK, the easiest one to get is definitely come over to Ireland because you can, be
Yeah.
here freely and then go from there. Yeah.
I also heard Portugal. That's an easy one for UK people as well. So I need to look into
Oh,
it.
is it?
Yeah, there's a certain visa that we have an agreement because we've been friends for like 500 years or something, right? But that's sort of
Been
unique.
friends. We
Yeah,
hang out on
yeah.
the playground together. Yeah.
Never been at war with each other, I think. So I think that's kind of
Yeah, that's good.
always
That's
been a thing.
good.
Yeah, the only upside of the Canadian passport in terms of Europe I found was that I can go 3 months in Europe on the British passport, go back to
Yeah.
Britain for a weekend, and then go on my Canadian passport to Europe. So I could stay there for all year without any working rights, but like on the tourist visa, if you're a digital nomad, for example, right? That's the only thing I can think of that's an
Yeah,
upside
I
for
think
Europe.
that actually you can do 90 days in the UK with a Canadian passport or EU with a Canadian passport. I think that's what it is, if I
Yeah.
recall. But honestly, it's been a long time for me before. Sorry, so it's been a long time since I've had to think about that. But yeah, that's from what I remember. Yeah.
Okay, and before we crack on with your initial first trip, a couple more questions. Did you have a career in mind, or was it, going through the school, college, you might earn a bit of
Yeah.
money for a job? Was there any career in mind, or were you just itching to go?
Yeah, so funny is when I was a small child, I thought I'd want to be a teacher or something, and that didn't last very long. But I remember that when I think back, that being the only career that I really thought about. And then I remember at one point wanting to make like really pretty dresses, like wedding dresses and stuff like that. But I can't even listen. I can't even sew for anything, so that's not even. But I think that always knew I wanted to be my own boss. I always
Yep.
knew I wanted to have my own business. I'm not the type of person that can work for someone else. And I knew that even as a child and definitely as a teenager. So, kind of opening a shop, and I make jewelry and stuff. So, opening a little shop where there's funky jewelry and then things for the house and kind of with a bit of a witchy aesthetic. And I think that's kind of what I was leaning towards. But at the time, I didn't think, of course, of when you have a business, you have to keep it going and the ups and the downs and the whatever. But definitely running a business of my own and just chilling out with people every day and building a little community the way that my parents built a community with the town that we lived in. I was always definitely like the thing that I knew that I was going to do in some capacity.
Did your parents stick it out in northern BC or did they go back to Italy?
Yeah, no, no, they stayed. They
Oh, wow.
stayed. Yeah, we went to the Okanagan for a while to give it a try and then ended up going back up north
Right.
and actually sold the restaurant a couple years ago. So it's and it was so beautiful because it was like it started as a deli in 1987 and then turned into an 80-seat restaurant and just
Oh,
went through so many changes. And
wow.
my dad kind of all did that on a whim, you know. He didn't have experience in the restaurant industry and he just made the most beautiful restaurant. But yeah, stuck it out there. And I talked to my mom recently. She said, you know, she went to Italy for a couple months last year and she said, you
Yeah.
know, I always consider myself Italian, but now I really feel like I'm Canadian. After going to live in Italy
Oh,
for a
wow.
couple months, I realized that I've been away for a long time and I consider myself Canadian. She said, your dad, I really think he will always consider himself to be, you know, Italian. So it's interesting.
That's interesting. I wonder what the period of time is for that where it switches or if there's a moment. It's quite an interesting discussion, that.
I think that my dad never lost his accent. He still always had
Yeah.
the real Italian way of thinking and the way of doing things. And my mom was a bit more modern. She was more open to kind of the Western, like more Western way of doing things. And I think that it's just my dad kind of went back sometimes. My mom, she didn't go back for a really long time. And so I think it's kind of she grew up with the way that we do things in Canada, which is much more organized, much more straightforward.
Hmm.
Where whereas my dad kind of was set in his ways by the time he came over here or over there. Sorry, by the time he went over there.
Yeah. I've got a question about food because obviously you do run some food tours now. So growing up,
Yeah,
naturally, you're probably going to be exposed to a lot of food stuff like a restaurant. So did you have a
yeah.
genuine interest in it as well, or did it grow over time?
You know, I always loved food and trying food and introducing people to food, but I didn't really have an interest in cooking myself. If I meet someone and I like them, like a friend or whoever, someone I'm going to date, I will show love by cooking them a meal, but I'm not someone who, you know, will
Mm,
go and make 7 dinners a week myself at home. I prefer to go out, to be honest,
fair.
or maybe kind of go off and on. But I had an interest in food in the sense that I love writing menus. I love thinking of flavor profiles, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
If I go travel somewhere, I go on a trip, the first thing I do is look at where to eat. So food does play a big part of my life, but not so much on the cooking scale. I do have siblings that were more involved in the cooking side of it, but for me, I was more front of house and kind of more interested in the community vibe of having a food business.
So let's go back to your first international trip. I think you said in the bio when you reached out to me that you're supposed to go for 3 months to be a nanny. So what was
Yeah.
the original plan and where were you going to go? What were your initial impressions when you arrived into Europe?
It's funny because I had just gone to my cousin's wedding in the Okanagan and I was chatting to a friend of hers and she's about 8 years older than me, my cousin. And so her friend and I were chatting and I told him, I want to go to Europe eventually. And he said, go, like, you need to go today. Figure out a way to do it today or you're not going to go and life is going to pass you by. Like, take
Yeah.
it from me.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, right? And it scared me into making a profile on a nanny, an au pair website. And I had been a nanny in Vancouver before and babysitting kids since I was 19. So that wasn't new to me. So I went home and made a profile on a nanny website and I chose the countries that I wanted to go to. And it was maybe like 4 or 5 countries. So Italy and then, all of the UK, Switzerland, France, blah, blah, blah. And the next day, a family in Florence chose me to
Hmm.
come live
Wow.
with them
Yeah.
for October, November, December. And I said, okay. And so, yeah, that was really, people asked me, why'd you choose Florence? And I said, no, Florence chose me, actually. And I went over and I was so excited, but it was really I hadn't been on a plane before. But it was a good way to get your foot in the door and go live with the family and you have a roof over your head and they can introduce you to the city and maybe introduce you to some people and that sort of thing. It's the safest, easiest, best way for young people to get their foot in the door in Europe, as far as I'm concerned. So I was completely nervous. I remember being with my sisters at breakfast the day before they dropped me off at the airport and I got totally cold feet. And I was like, you know what? No, I can stay here, run the restaurant. It's fine. And I really tried to talk myself out of it. And they made me go. Two of my sisters made me get on a plane, and I got on the plane. And yeah, that's it. The rest was history. I got on the plane and I got to Rome was where I landed, and then I had to take the train to Florence. And I remember when I first got there, the family said they would pick me up outside of McDonald's, and my first thought was like, "Are you kidding me? Like McDonald's is in Tuscany?" But I didn't see them, and for a moment I felt relief. I'm like, "Oh, it was a scam. They don't exist. I can go home."
Go
Like
back.
that was
Yeah.
a thought in my head, you know. But there was actually one McDonald's in the train station and one McDonald's across the street from the train station. And they were at the one across the street from the train station. And so they were there and they collected me. And yeah, that's where my little adventure began. And Italy was everything that I thought it would be, was everything I saw in the movies. I remember opening my little wooden shutters to the balconies that you see on
Dream.
TV.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. I fell in love instantly. Yeah.
And what age were you at this point? And I guess you could speak the language Italian as well, right?
Okay, so I was 26 at the time,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, I was old. I was old to be a
No.
nanny, to be honest, and that's. But no, I'm not fluent in Italian. As funny as
Oh,
it is, my parents actually didn't speak it with us, which is, I mean, don't even
oh.
get me started on that whole thing. I can get by, I can have an easy conversation, but I can't be talking about philosophy and politics. And when I lived in Florence, all my Italian friends want to practice their English, and so it was
Mm.
kind of like, ugh, ugh, ugh. But yeah, if I see something written in Italian, I know how to pronounce it. Like I said, I can get by. I look Italian, so nobody gives me the tourist menu when I'm walking down the street. So, but yeah, I'm not fluent, unfortunately. I know it's so sad.
What is it like now? Is it quite conversational?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And if I'm drinking, if I've had if I've had a few drinks and I'm in Italy, then hey, I won't shut up. You can't get me to shut up. But yeah, most of the time it's just pretty easy going.
And how long did the nannying last with that family?
Yeah, so it's funny because it was only for 3 months, and then they didn't need me anymore. So I had already bought my return ticket. I went home, but when I went home to Canada, I on my way home, I bought a ticket to come back to Florence a few months later because I was not done. I was not done with Florence. So I went home and then I came back a few months later, and this time I stayed for 6 months on a working holiday visa.
Got it. Yeah.
And yeah, and then same thing happened. I after a couple when that ended, I went home, but I bought a return ticket, and I was going to stay for six. Actually, I was going to stay forever because at that point I had got my Italian passport,
Right.
and
Okay.
my plan was that's it. I'm going to stay here. I'm done. And then after 6 months, I said, well, what's going on in Ireland? And then that started the next chapter. Yeah.
Before Ireland,
Yes.
in Italy, what
Yes.
places did you see there? And was there any favorite haunts of yours, like cities or towns or little villages or areas?
So, it's funny because when I was in Florence, I kind of mostly stayed in that area of like Siena, Pisa, Lucca, all those little towns. But there's a square in Florence called Piazza della Signoria, and it has all of the statues, replicas of all the statues. And now they've actually put up a barrier. So they close it at, I think, 9 p.m. and they have a guard there. And it's completely different than when it was when I lived there. But before it was open. So I remember going down there at even 1 in the morning when I couldn't sleep at night and just sitting with the statues, and I'd be the only person in the square. And it sounds ridiculous because it sounds stupid and dangerous, but Florence was very safe, especially at the time, very well lit. I knew every corner of the city center, and sitting there and being with the statues, and that's my favorite place, I think, in the world. Like it's just really close to my heart. And so Piazza della Signoria is my favorite place in Florence, 100%. You walk up to the hill. There's a walk up to Piazza Michelangelo where you can see the whole city
Mm.
from. And whenever I bring someone to Florence, I take them like through all of my favorite spots. And that's my favorite part. Showing people Florence is one of my favorite things in the world. So you can also go up to Fiesole, which is a little town just, maybe half an hour away. There's a couple little spots, but mostly my favorite spots when I go somewhere are little cafes owned by people that I've become friendly with, places that really made me feel at home when I was there. Those end up being my favorite places instead of maybe the most beautiful place or the most famous place, or,
Yeah.
it's kind of more about the way that it made me feel at the time.
Do you have like a favorite or favorites, like in terms of restaurants in Florence or little food places?
Yeah, I do have a few, but I don't want to spoil, my my Florentine tour if anyone's listening. But I definitely have a few places for sure. I think I know where the best aperitivo is at. It seems that all the places that I love going are places that are never advertised. They're never places that
Ah,
there's TikToks are never made on them. They're never on any list. But I'm just like, you're missing out. You all are missing out on some good food over here. But I will say my favorite gelateria is Gelateria La Carrara in at the end of one of the bridges, and they have this gelato that's pear and ricotta, and that is the
oh,
best.
wow.
I Yes, it's my favorite. It's the best, and I will go there no matter what. Any trip I have to Florence, before I go to the train station, before I get on that train, I'm getting a gelato if I haven't already had it 6 times that week.
Okay. And you do run food tours in Florence. I think I was going to come to that later, but as we're in Florence now, so let's
Yeah.
say, do you have two food tours there? Like what type of tours do you run there in terms of what can they expect?
Yeah, so like when I first lived there, I was meeting people through different websites or through the community, and would bring them on a tour that's very informal. It's probably not the idea of what people think a food tour is. I would bring them around to my favorite places to eat, try this, try that. It wasn't like a kind of corporate tour that people
Mm.
may be thinking of. So when I went back to live in Florence this past year in January and February. And so that's kind of thing. When I go for an extended period of time, people can book a tour on my website. If we're there at the same time, yeah, I bring them to my favorite places. And it's kind of more like that rather than, I'm not there all the time, but I am there for extended periods of time. Often I go back about 3 times a year. So that's generally more a kind of special occasion kind of tour. My main thing is here in Dublin.
Okay. And the tours would be like a mix of obviously your favorite restaurants, but I'm guessing you're given some facts or some interesting quotes about the place.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like in Florence, I can't really compare with somebody who's like, talking about their nonna that
Oh,
made
yeah.
this and had her own. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to try to compete with an Italian, especially someone who's from Florence. They're very proud people, and so I mainly go to like, yes, I'm not going to come here and tell you the history of this. This cheese or whatever, but I'm going to take you to this little place owned by this guy whose sons make their own olive oil, and we're going to talk to him and what life is like raising these sons, and we're going to have some of his meat and his cheese and have a glass of wine and kind of do a little trail like that through Florence. And we're going to have a dessert, we're going to have a coffee, we're going to have a panino, we're going to have some pizza. And my tours, and even in Dublin as well, is more about the people and their stories, and
Nice.
small businesses with big hearts is kind of the most important thing to me.
I've got another question about your trip actually, which is quite important. What did you learn about yourself when you're traveling solo?
That I'm capable, a lot more capable than I thought I was, and that whatever hardships I thought I had before I traveled were absolutely meaningless, basically. When your parents are an arm's length away, you know, the difficulties you have in life, for me anyway, were nothing compared to when you're an ocean away and you don't want to worry your parents if you run into some sort of trouble, and you're feeling like an outcast because, yeah, it's hard to integrate into a new social setting, even if it's not a foreign country. You just move to a new city and it's hard to
Yeah.
integrate and make friends and find a place for yourself. But I think that, like, getting on a plane and going to a place I never knew, and especially after I left that family and finding my own apartment to rent and finding a way to make money. I also tutored children. I tutored English to kids as well, and still did some nannying and stuff. Like being able to find a way to support myself in a foreign country, all of those things. It's like, wow, I can do those things, and I feel super capable when I didn't really have to be capable before. My parents owned a business. I always had a job. I could work for them, blah, 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 blah. And then realizing that, oh, I'm capable of a lot more when I've actually had real hardships that now, looking back, of course, I'm thankful for. But that's what it taught me the most about myself, that like, oh, you are actually capable of doing this and making something work, which is priceless.
Yeah, you can't really learn that unless you just chuck yourself in, right? In the deep end. Sometimes
Yeah, absolutely.
you kind of have to learn on the go, figure out some techniques, right? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So I guess like there'll be a lot of people listening, like probably a bit nervous about doing that sort of thing, especially if they're female, maybe as well, dipping into a foreign country.
100%. And that's why I'm saying if you're of a certain age, like if you're under 30, 100% try to get a nannying gig, at least just to get your foot in the door. And a lot of people kind of think, oh, I'd love to live in this country or that country. But maybe you go do it for 3 months and it sucks. And you're like, oh, never mind. And just get it out of your system before you sell all your stuff and try to get a visa and all of that stuff. I really recommend people do that because it's just the best way. Or to maybe go do a course. But when you do a course, they don't always help you find a place to live. The thing with nannying is you have a place to live, and it's just the best option. I always tell people. And I also think it's like if you go abroad and something doesn't work out, get on a plane and come home. It is not the end of the world. I think people just are so scared. And I know because I've done it and I was scared as well. But getting on that plane was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think that just taking that first step is so, so important. And it leads to like your evolution. And that's, what we're here for, like humans having this experience to go up and experience more and learn more and get to the next level. And you can't get to the next level if you're just staying at home in your mommy's house, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Your situation is interesting because you would have had a guaranteed home job business, right? A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
quite difficult to break out of because there's always comfort there to a degree, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, at one point my dad said, if you come back, because he didn't want me to stay in Europe. He said, if you come back,
Oh,
I'll buy you a house.
wow.
Yeah. And I said, nope.
How come he doesn't want you to stay in Europe? He's from Europe.
I know, but that's exactly it. And he said to me, when are you coming home? And I say, well, Dad, you never went home. You're in
Yeah,
Canada
yeah, yeah,
still.
yeah, of course.
But that's the thing. He went there to make a family and he had it. And Italians especially, they want to keep their kids close to them no matter how
Sure.
old they are. And so he wanted me to be home and tried everything to get me to come home. But no, it was an experience that I absolutely had to have.
Okay, so that kind of brings us on to the next place, which is Dublin in Ireland. So how did that come about?
Yeah.
Why are you going over there from Italy? I would have thought you maybe might stuck into Mediterranean, maybe Greece or Spain or Portugal, but straight up to Ireland.
What's so funny is that like I love Italy and the history, the culture, the weather, the food, the fashion, everything is beautiful, but it's too disorganized for me to live long term. And I learned
Right.
that. And I was like, let me go somewhere that's still in Europe, but maybe is a little more familiar to me. But I didn't want to jump into another situation. So in November 2010, I went to Dublin for 3 days. And actually, what happened was I had met a girl traveling in Florence and she was from Dublin. And I said, oh, I'd always wanted to go to Ireland. And she was like, you should come visit me. You can stay at my house. And I was like, okay. So I actually bought the ticket and everything. And then she had told me that she was going to be doing her exams, but I could stay at her house, which is actually her parents' house out in the suburbs. And I didn't
Yeah.
really feel comfortable with that. So I just got a hostel in town and I went for 3 days. And by the time the 3 days was over, I was like, yeah, I'm going to come live here. And like, that was it. By February 1st, a month and a half later, I was living in Dublin.
And you had the Italian passport at this point, so it's not a problem with visa wise. So
Yeah.
what are you thinking in terms of sustaining yourself there? Maybe you save money from Italy, but like in terms of getting a job
Well,
or
no.
okay.
No. The apartment that I was renting in Florence, I told my landlord, I'm going to go for the magic number for 3 months. I'm going to go for 3 months. I'll find somebody to take this apartment while I'm gone, and I'll be back in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I found somebody to sublet it, and that was great. And I went to Dublin knowing I could just find a waitressing job, like by snapping my fingers, essentially, because I had so much experience. And I had found an apartment just from the online adverts where some guy had rented me a room in his house. And he didn't even have to trust that I was going to show up on February 1st, but he did. And he was lovely. And I rented a room in his house and got a job after a couple weeks. But then, of course, after the money starts coming in, 3 months is up. And I said, well, I want to stay longer and make more money and see what life is like here. So I told my landlord in Florence, another 3 months. And it kind of went another 3 months for, a year or
Yeah.
so, until eventually I said, here, I'll come get my stuff. And, and then just wanted to give it a go here in Dublin.
You've done your waitressing. So I mentioned in the intro
Yeah.
you owned a cafe. So was that a bit after that? And then how was that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, so I had moved here in 2011, and then the end of 2012, I just worked in restaurants here or there, nothing,
Yeah.
whatever, nothing serious. And then in 2012, I started managing a place. In December 2012, I started and managed a place for about 2 years. And then the owner had just sold it basically overnight. And that was super upsetting for me because I was just, loved the staff and loved the clientele and everything. And then I thought, I can't possibly go back to working for someone because the owner of the restaurant was never there. He had his other job. He was an accountant. And so I was running the place and I was basically the boss.
Mm.
I thought I can't possibly go work for someone else at this point. So I said, I either have to leave Ireland or open up my own restaurant. Those are my only two options.
Right.
And then I just went for option B. I opened up my own restaurant. I ended up opening up a restaurant next door to where the one I just was working at closed down, where it was. And it wasn't a restaurant at the time. It was an abandoned bedding shop.
Yeah.
And I got it renovated and did the whole thing. And that's how I started my cafe.
What sort of cafe was it? What were you selling there?
We did like soup, sandwiches, coffees, and cakes, but we'd also do like risotto and stuff like that. And it definitely had Italian influences, but I didn't want to put Italian anywhere on the sign because I didn't want people to walk by and be like, oh, I don't want spaghetti. I didn't want them to have this idea in their head that Italian only meant, pasta. So I would have, for instance, green eggs and ham, which is like poached eggs with pesto and prosciutto. So a little spin, Italian influences, but a big jar of biscotti on the counter, things like that.
Yeah.
But also things that were going to appeal to the palates of the locals. But I did get them to try some things that they otherwise wouldn't have tried, and they ended up loving. But it was a bit of a struggle at first, but they trusted me. They trusted that I know their taste at this point because they'd been my customers for a few years at the other place. So it all actually ended up working out pretty well.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you. Is that quite a tough business, the cafe business? It seems to be a heck of a journey, that from start to finish, if you finish it.
I 1,000,000%. You couldn't offer me all the money in the world to ever do it again. And it's funny because now I interview people for my TikToks and stuff sometimes, business owners. And I say to them, what's a piece of advice you'd give to someone who wants to open a food business? And they always say, don't, don't do it. And I'm like, I can understand. And it's such a struggle because on one hand, you love food and you love people and you want to be your own boss and you want to whatever. But on the other hand, I mean, even my boss, the one that closed down that restaurant overnight, he told me, you know how many sleepless nights I've had in the last 4 or 5 years? Like I can sleep tonight for the first time in half a decade. And I kind of thought he was exaggerating until I owned a cafe. And then I was like, oh God, he's right. It's really just, you're thinking about and hoping that, this happens, that happens, whatever. And there's so many things you have to think about. The place doesn't get vandalized. It doesn't get broken into. COVID wasn't even a thought in anyone's mind at the time, but geez, I'm really glad I got out of the situation before COVID hit, to be honest. So it is very difficult. I love that I had the experience because I could cross it off my bucket list and I never, ever have to think about doing it again for the rest of my life.
Do you think it's easier if you open a cafe that's just for coffee, for example? I've thought about this before in terms of like a little dream of just having like a nice little espresso cafe or something like that, but only like coffee really, or tea to an extent, but no food. But I wonder if there's like little bits of the cafe business that may be a bit easier to do in terms of like coffee as an example.
So the funniest thing is that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do coffees and cakes and that. And the accountant and the people helping me set up the place, because the government has schemes to help you like build a business if you want. Yeah. And they were like, do you know how many cups of coffee you have to sell? And I was like, yeah. And they really broke it down for me. And you look at the numbers and you're like, oh God, like I can have this guy pay $2 for a coffee, or he can walk out of here paying a tenner for a sandwich and whatever, and come for his coffee in the morning and come back in the afternoon for his coffee.
Right.
You know, if he's hungry, I want him coming to me and his morning coffee and his afternoon. I don't want him going to the person next door for a sandwich. He needs to give that money to me. and that's what kind of made me say, okay. But my place was very small. It was only 8 seats. I did a lot of a takeaway business, to be honest. But I think that in a perfect world, if I could, ever go back into the food business again, the only way that I would do it is if I had literally a little kiosk on a market. Yeah. I think, with my little dog sitting, my little Yorkie sitting on the counter, and I don't have a Yorkie, but this is part of the dream, you see. And that's it. And just do little coffees and little biscotti, and that's about it. But the money has to be there, right? And that's the downside.
Yeah, maybe like a little espresso machine on a little stall in a market, or a very basic shelter, but not like a proper cafe where it's only takeaway only and they can go and sit in the square, whatever. Maybe that's a better dream, because in my eyes, it seems the outlay is not as much. You just got to pay for the permit, I guess, to be there, and obviously your coffee machine and the coffee, but there's no overlay in terms of the whole building, right, with insurance and...
Yes. And there's so many things that you don't think about, because then there's also pest control. There's also the health inspector. There's also the garbage man. There's so many people that you don't ever think about that you're going to have to deal with. The landlord. So many people. And then you're like, wow, there's so many. When you think that you're going to own a business, you think you're going to be the boss. And actually you end up answering to so many people that you go, I had it all wrong. All these years in my mind, I had it all wrong,
Okay. And so you're in Dublin, and this is a bit of a journey. Did you travel to any other parts of Ireland in the meantime, or was that after the cafe?
Yeah, I went to, Galway, Cork, and I went up north to Belfast and, little towns nearby, Wicklow and all of that. But I would really, this year, as we go kind of into the new year, my plans are to really travel more of Ireland, to go to the farms that supply some of the restaurants that are on my tour, go to some oyster farms, really, in that sense, go and explore Ireland that way, not so much as a tourist, but kind of really seeing the places where the food I serve people comes from firsthand, because that's super important to me. And a special experience, I think it'll be to me as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to see it. Because I love Irish food, right? Like the classic stews, and also the Irish breakfast and all that sort of stuff, right? It's kind of a bit like British food to a degree, right?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, it's that kind of same stuff, which I kind of miss, which you can't really get here sometimes.
No.
And I just think that even the Irish takeaways, they're bloody good, aren't they? Like compared to like here, for example. Yeah, I follow a few food pages online, and they're like just takeaways only, but you see them in Ireland getting these like boxes for Chinese or Indian. Just looks incredible. So I kind of miss that dodgy Irish English food.
You could go to China or India if you're looking for that food as well.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? You must know this, right? But when you grow up in UK or Ireland and you get a takeaway, you do think that's Chinese or Indian, right? You just, because it's labeled as that. Yeah. But actually it's 100%. It's English Chinese or it's Irish Chinese. There's a difference to it than the real Chinese, right? So when you come here to like Vancouver and go to Richmond, where they got like proper Chinese restaurants, you're like, oh shit, this is well different to what I was eating. Like, which one's true?
Well, I think the one that doesn't serve chips is probably the one that's
yeah, exactly.
Just a hunch.
Yeah, I just miss that English or Irish Chinese takeaways or Indian takeaways. Oh, so good. So you're in Dublin now. So you must have stuck it out for a while. So what happened in between the cafe ending and then we're here now before we get to your tour? So what were you doing in the meantime?
People ask me, why'd you stay in Ireland? Did you fall in love? Did you this, do that? And I'm like, no, actually it was always circumstance. Like I was there and then someone wanted me to run their business. So I did. And then when that ended, someone else wanted me, this guy that closed down wanted me to run his business. Okay, so I did. Every 2 years, something happens. Right. And then I opened up my own place, and then I was ready to leave after the lease ended on that. The landlord said, do you want to go another year? I said, hell no, I'm done. But then I got in a relationship. So then I stayed a little bit longer. And then when that ended, I said, okay, I'm going to go. And then COVID was like, hold up, you're not going anywhere. So then I stayed, and then COVID's kind of, out of the way now. But now my tours are going amazing. So it's really hard to get up and go. So it's just kind of that circumstances. It's honestly nothing else. There's no big reason for me to be here other than these things that kind of keep, pulling me back. So after I closed my cafe, I actually took a break from the whole hospitality thing and went into dog care
Oh,
full time. And so it was dog sitting, dog walking, anything to do with animals. And that was really amazing, especially because I could still do it during COVID, because people might be working from home, but instead of them getting up and going and walking their dog, I'd be, doing that for them. Or if they're having staycations in Ireland, I'll go stay at their house for anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks. And then I also started an online greeting card shop, which went crazy during COVID because everyone was
yes.
sending cards to each other. So that
Amazing.
did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a few cafes that I have 4 wholesalers now that sell my cards in their shops. And so I had my fingers in like some pots. And like I said, I make jewelry. So I was making jewelry and making, soaps and lotions and wax melts and candles and all of these things on an online shop. So kind of doing a little bit of everything to keep me busy during those years. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to go do the food tours again. Because actually, I should say, I started doing food tours again in 2019, but only for about 2 months before COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I, didn't have a long time to kind of get into it. And then I said, I'll just pick up my food tours again now. And and then that's what happened. So I started doing them again in the fall of 2022 here in Dublin. And I've been going nonstop ever since.
And are these the same sort of tours as the Italian ones?
No, because this one's really focused on where the food is coming from, and really that kind of thing is not so much my experience with the food and the owners, but like where it's sourced and telling people about Irish food, because I think a lot of people don't really know what Irish food is. And my job is to kind of change their idea of what that is and be like, you can associate beautiful, gorgeous, good tasting food with Ireland, which is something I don't think a lot of people do unless maybe they live here and they've really experienced it firsthand. Because I've had people that come on my tours that have been here before and they're like, yeah, my idea has completely changed because of you, which is amazing. That's the best thing I can do is, change someone's perception on something in a positive way.
Yeah, I saw one of the reviews actually on your website that said, I think they're local in Dublin.
Yeah.
And the places that you take them to, they've only, I think there's like 5, I think they said, but only one of them they actually knew. So that's quite good because you're kind of helping even locals know or get to know like new places, right?
Yeah, I do anywhere from 6 to 8 stops. It depends kind of like, how much food we're going to have, or if there's dietary restrictions that they have, I might replace one stop with something else. But I even had a couple from Dublin last night or 2 nights ago, and they were like, they've lived here for 10 years. They're from Wicklow, and they just said like, yeah, we're going back to every single one of these places. We haven't been to any of them, and we learned so much and appreciate. That's the other thing. I think a lot of people don't appreciate the amazing base ingredients we have on the island. And if I can help them appreciate it, then I'm so happy to do that.
So you explain to the people on your tours not only the food they're getting, but also where it comes from in particular parts of Ireland, but also how it comes together to make this dish, I guess.
Yes, and also how to eat it as well.
Okay.
I love it when people really take my instructions. Some people are just like, use me for the next 2 hours, like I'm your puppet, and it's amazing because I just like do this, cut it this way, put this on it, do this, and I love it when people are really open-minded that way.
What some of the dishes might they experience? Like just maybe one as an example.
So for instance, my tour really focuses around seafood, meat, and dairy. So for sure, they're going to get some gorgeous Irish oysters, and I tell them where the oysters come from and how, if they're coming from different bays in Ireland, the different tastes that they're going to have. And a lot of people are used to just shooting an oyster, but I let them know to take some water first and then give it 2 chews on each side of your mouth to get out some salinity, get out some sweetness, and then swallow it. And a lot of people have been eating oysters their whole lives and they've never eaten it that way, for instance, or little things like that. I give them something sweet. I give them a beer. I give them some dairy. I give them some meat. I give them a little bit of everything from basically every food group. And if I can enhance it with something else, like putting a mignonette on the oyster, for instance, or we go for fish and chips. And so I say, well, eat half of it this way and half of it this way, put this on half and this on the other half. And we compare. And yeah, it's a real fun experience.
How do you make sure that the individual stops, let's say six, right? How do you make sure you
Yeah.
don't eat too much? Because
We
my
don't. I
worry would
kind
be,
of.
yeah.
There comes a point on about the third stop when I tell them, okay, guys, after this, we have two savory stops, a dessert, and a beer. So I let them know. And sometimes people ask me, they're like, how many stops are left? How much food? I want to pace myself. But there's
Yes.
at least one person in the group every time that's like eats everything. If something's left, they eat it. That's my trooper. I'm always chanting their name. I'm like, Kevin, like totally. But yeah, I sometimes around the end, I ask them, can you fit another stop in? They always say yes. And then we get to the stop and they can do maybe half of it. And then like, I can't, I'm dying, which I rather than be too full than they have to go to Burger King on the way home. As long as they're full, that's my, you know what I mean? Then that's all I want. Yeah.
Okay. I remember doing a dosa tour in India once and
yeah,
we had about 10 doses and that is like ridiculous. And then I think the 11th one was like a dessert dosa. I was like, I can't do it. I can't have chocolate
You're
and
like,
dosa again.
You're like, I'm going to overdose.
Well, we didn't really get any like indication of how many we're going to have, so we're kind of trying these doses, right? And they're huge, especially traditional ones, and they just kept coming and coming. I just didn't really plan for it. And everyone at the end on the minibus were just out of it, completely gone.
Everyone's just passed out.
Yeah, completely gone. Amazing, but that's kind of like I think that might be my first food tour, so I learned a lot from that experience, like just to pace yourself, maybe take a few bites. I know you might still be hungry, but wait, a bit of patience. Crazy. Well, Dublin, is there going to be much walking on these tours, or are you trying to keep it in a close-knit community area, or is there a minibus? Like, how do you navigate that?
Oh God, no. So I actually did it one time. I put it into Google Maps and we only walk about like 800 meters really. Oh, okay. So it's not that much. Yeah. So a couple of the places are close to each other and they're in areas where cars can't get through anyway. I did have a request of someone saying, can we rent a driver? And I was just like, we really don't need a driver. So yeah, it's not a lot of walking at all. And it's all pretty much flat. There's obviously some cobblestones around Temple Bar, but other than that, no, it's pretty easy going. I've had people bring a stroller before, a pram, and that was fine. So yeah, it's pretty easy going.
And people can see the tour itinerary on your website, right? Roughly.
Somewhat. Yeah. I just let them know we do about 6 to 8 stops and it has, meat, seafood, and dairy. And I don't really do dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
Unless there's a private tour. But even then, I don't really like to do it because if I'm talking about farms and I'm talking about this, that, and the other, and you don't eat meat, it's not going to do the tour justice.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And what's the prices of these tours?
So they're about, it depends. If you want a private tour, it goes to about €100 per person. Because especially if like you want something dietary, if you have an allergy of some sort and have to go around it and figure out something new. Or if you have a big group, my maximum is 6. But if you want to bring 15 people, it's going to be harder for us to get tables in restaurants. It's going to be, there's some wiggling around. So there's an extra charge. Usually it's around €85. And that's around the price that it is. Sometimes if you want to get a ticket, say that it's a Sunday night and you want to come on Monday and I don't have any bookings, there's probably a cheaper rate floating around if it's about 24 hours leading up to it, kind of like a seat sale, if you will. Mm-hmm. But yeah, mainly around €85.
Where can they book the tours?
So on my website, which is ontheroad.com, and you just email me for availability and like I'm answering back at lightning speed with my availability. And then I would send you an invoice with my business account and you can pay with Google Pay or whatever suits you. Or you can go to Airbnb and look for me under experiences. And I'm the Unconventional Food Tour. And I should pop up. Well, I'm one of the highest rated food tours. So I should be right up there, to be honest.
Should be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put the links in the show notes so people can find you.
Amazing.
So that should be easy.
Thank you.
I've got some extra questions about your tours because I'm really intrigued, maybe not from the content on the tours, but things you experienced. You must have met some interesting people on your tours. Do you have any funny stories where some stuff has happened or it's gone wrong or we've had to adapt to a certain situation?
No. So, well, the first person I get, it's funny because a lot of people ask me this question, which I find is very interesting. Like people on tour will ask me if I've met anyone interesting or strange, and I find it really funny. So this person isn't particularly strange. They're very eccentric. It was last summer, and I do groups from 1 to 6 people.
Yeah.
So if you're one person, I'm bringing you. I don't think solo travelers should have to miss out on an experience
Sure.
because they're solo traveling, He was very interesting. He was a sociologist, and he carried around a little notepad with him and would make notes on things. And on our second stop, I said to him, "What's with the notepad?" And he said, "I've been carrying notepads like this since I was 12. I have about 300 of these at home that are filled up." And I said, "What do you do with them?" He said, "Nothing. Just, I was like, "Okay, interesting." And I was at the next stop and I was ordering, and he was standing beside me. I said, "You can just have a seat at this table." He said, "Can I watch you order?" And I was like, "No, can you just go sit down?" It just became kind of like a funny thing. Like we started kind of making fun of each other, But then he told me, he said, "I read your description and this is why I booked your tour, but I'm going to give you some notes later about things that I think you should change and things that I think you should keep." And I was like, "Okay." And he wrote me a very lovely review. But then in the private feedback, he wrote probably 4 paragraphs of what he liked and what he didn't like in my description. And you know what? I took his advice and I changed, I changed what I could. And I love it. I love it when people can be upfront and honest with you, when they want the best for you, when they support what you do and they want you to be better. I really love that. So he's the first person that comes to mind when I think about that. I haven't had any bad situations or anything like that. Everyone's been pretty lovely. I did have one older gentleman that was upset that there was too much walking, but for me, I was like, it's not that much walking, but I can slow down. If someone says we're going too fast, I can absolutely slow down, especially because like this is my job and I don't have anywhere else to be. I'm here for you, So, but other than that, no, everybody's been amazing. And some of the people I keep in touch with, a lot of the people, they keep in touch with me. They follow me on Instagram or whatever. And yeah, it's really lovely. And that's the best part about doing the tours is meeting the people.
I guess you need that sort of sharing. I do, right, for the podcast. I need people to effectively share it mouth to mouth. I mean, believe it or not, that is still the most popular way to share the podcast. And I can imagine it's the same for tours.
Yeah, sometimes there's people that actually like, I had a couple, they were from Dublin, they did my tour, and then a week later they sent one of their colleagues and his wife to come do my tour, which was so lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah.
Any guests or people on the tours that maybe didn't like any of the food?
Yeah. So one time I had these 2 sisters here from Dublin, and they were a little bit older, like in their early 60s, I'd say.
Yeah.
And one of them doesn't eat any red meat or alcohol, or I think there was something else. So she was left out of 6 out of 8 spots she didn't want to eat at. And they didn't tell me this ahead of time. They just rocked up and I was like, well, it's too late now. Like I can't make the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she said, "No, I'll do it. It's fine. I'll still, you know what I mean? Like basically watch her sister eat," which was a shame. And where I could find substitutions, I did. But I also am like, I wasn't prepared for it. So it wasn't as good maybe I was being critical of myself, but I would have wanted to know more about what she was eating. I know my menu, I know it back to front. I know where it's coming from. I know what it is. I know everything. But if we show up and you say, "Don't eat this," but also I know that's vegetarian, but I don't like that either, then I'm like, okay, that was my my backup vegetarian dish. So yeah, that was one time where I thought, oh, that's not good. I don't like that because more than anything, I don't want one of my guests leaving hungry. And so if you're not eating at most of the stops, then you're going to leave hungry. But I also felt like it was your sister's fault. Let's be honest. If your sister doesn't eat so many things, let me know ahead of time. Or one time I had 3 girlfriends show up, and yeah, one of them, same thing, didn't eat meat, didn't eat seafood.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, but she was like, "It's okay. I'm just here to hang out." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm here for you to eat though." So, but yeah, there were a couple times, but usually people really, because I say it twice in the description. And then when you buy the ticket, you get a confirmation email as a reminder saying, "Remember this,"
Yeah, if I was in Dublin, right, and I'll come on one of your tours. I would do that. But I don't eat oysters or never have tried them, but I would give it a go.
Yeah.
So you'd see me eating an oyster for the first time. And I'm not sure how I'm going to react.
And I've had that situation. Oysters is one of the things I can really, people love them or hate them, or
Right.
maybe people will say, I don't know, I'm iffy about oysters. And I say, like, if you eat this oyster and it doesn't make you love oysters, no oyster is going to make you love. This is the final boss of oysters, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and also, but that's one thing. If you don't want oysters, that's fine. That's one stop out of
Yeah, of
eight. And
course.
it's just a little
Yeah.
amuse bouche. You're not missing out on a lot. So but that's fine. Oysters is one thing, but if you're saying I don't like oysters and I don't like red meat and I can't eat dairy and I have a gluten intolerance, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like it's a little bit too much for me.
Do you chuck in a pint of Guinness in there somewhere?
Yeah, it's actually half a pint because
Sure.
usually people are actually just too
It's
full to do
heavy.
a full pint, but absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I let them decide if they want to do Guinness or if they want to do one of the other beers that are well known or maybe not as well known, but still lovely and that are rare, that are only sold in certain pubs or whatever. But I suggest Guinness, but most people are going to the Guinness storehouse anyway
Yeah.
at some point.
True.
So I try to suggest maybe something else if they are doing that.
Okay. And I've got some questions more from the tour point of view in terms of your side. So if someone is thinking right now, I'd like to set up a tour in my home place, it could be a food tour, could be any other tour. Any advice you'd pass on about what they should look into first or how they should create their tour?
Well, first of all, I started doing ghost tours the year before last, and I let that go because I got so busy with food tours that I let that take precedence. But if you're going to do a tour that's not food related, I would say research, do your practice with like friends, have friends go through it, and only try to give a tour on something you're genuinely interested
Yeah.
about. So I love ghosty things. I love going to the Shelbourne and seeing what kind of ghosts are there. So me remembering those facts isn't going to be difficult. Whereas if it's something that's going to totally bore me and I have to kind of have an essay in my head and I'm not genuinely interested in it, the tour is not going to go well. But I love talking about ghosts. So I love telling about the ghosts, the 5 ghosts at Malahide Castle. I love making a visual for you. I love setting the scene. So I would say only do a tour on something you are genuinely interested in and not just something you think might make you a bit of money. So that's my first point of advice. If you're going to do a food tour, for instance, think about what your angle is going to be. So my angle is, yes, like the farm to table connection, and also foods influenced by like immigrants coming over and making a life here. That's what I did. That's what my parents did. And so that's very close to my heart. And so it's these fusions. Half my tour, it's called the Unconventional Food Tour because half the tour is traditional Irish food and the other half is Irish provenance within international dishes.
Right.
So everything we eat is made and grown in Ireland, but it's going to have some fusions. And so that really interests me. That's close to my heart. So I think about, what do I want people to leave here with the idea of what Irish food is? Well, I want them to think it's this, this, and this. What foods best represent that? And kind of go down the line. Then you have to go in, speak to the restaurant owners. And that is the hardest part.
Yeah, how does that work?
Not making conversation. Yeah, I mean, not making conversations with the people, but having them actually, you agree on what you want to do, and having them not like ghost you, or having them not like forget to tell their staff who you are and what your order is, and not. It takes time and it takes practice to get the rhythm of who you want to work with and making it all be very harmonious. And I've had the same map now for about 15 months and I love the restaurants I go to. I love them to death. And I don't bring anyone on my tour where I don't go on my day off. If I don't go there in real life, I don't bring my guests there. Yeah. And that's just the end of the story, you know? My relationships with the restaurants is so, so important. It's maybe the most important thing. And so I would say that, like, making sure that your relationships with the people you want to work with are harmonious, or it's just not going to work. It's not going to work for anybody.
Do they like guarantee you some seats if you got a tour booked like in advance? Is that how that works?
So there's one of the places on my tour where, yes, they do give me a booking. The other places, I have a very informal tour. It's professional, but some of the places are super informal and we can just rock up and there's going to be a seat. And if there isn't, we can just chill out and wait a minute, or find an alternative, like, oh, maybe we'll just go, we'll take our food in a takeaway and just eat it out front or whatever. That has only happened one time, but I'm at the point now, I think, with these restaurants where no one's going to send me away. If it ever came to the fact that there's not a table, we would just kind of hover and make conversation for 5 minutes until somebody leaves. Because they're not sit down fancy restaurants either. Yeah. that's not the vibe of it. So yeah, there's quite a quick turnover in most of the places we go to, thankfully.
Okay, because I've kind of considered starting a tour here right, in Vancouver, and you're right about
Yeah.
what the genuine interest for me would be. And I think my genuine interest would be
Mm-hmm.
coffee. But I have a problem with
Mm-hmm.
coffee, and you might agree or not agree with this, and it's kind of the same as food, is you can only have a certain amount of coffee per day. So if you're doing like five
Yeah.
cafes and you're having five espressos, that is like a lot of
Yeah.
coffee. So I'm trying to work out how would I mitigate that with something else in there. So that's like my only concern, really.
Yeah, I think maybe like it would be interesting if you could do different types of coffee, like different like coffee in different forms. Maybe you want to have an affogato is going to be one, or maybe you're
Mm.
going to have coffee flavored ice cream at one stop, or
Oh
maybe I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
really don't know. Maybe one stop is going to be actually going to a micro roastery and seeing how the beans are roasted. Like there's different kind of ways that you can
yeah.
do it. But you're right, coffee is the thing that a lot of people love and they're into, but there's people only so many people can handle more than two coffees a day or whatever.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
but it's something to definitely like sit down and think about. I've definitely seen tours that are like, oh, we're going on a taco tour, and it's like just tacos. Well, tacos is a little bit different because people can eat like 12 tacos, no problem.
Yeah.
But I do see some things that are concentrated, and I think, how can people eat just that, like a
Sure.
cupcake tour or something,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like,
Cake would be the same
ooh,
thing.
.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But I think if something is of a genuine interest to you, you should definitely sit down and think about different angles you can take it from, especially if it kind of keeps living in your head, like
Mm.
knock, knock, I'm here. I want to be, worked with in some way. Then yeah.
Have you considered starting another tour in a different place in Europe?
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like when I finished my cafe, I thought, how can I work with food and work with people and not have to rent a brick and mortar and have a job where I can take it if I want to move? And food tours was just the perfect thing. And funnily enough, before I opened my cafe, I was sitting with my sister having afternoon tea at a fancy hotel when she came to visit me in Dublin. After the place that I was working at closed, and I said, my choices now are either start a food tour or open up a cafe. And she said, well, what the hell is a food tour? Because this was back a few years now, 2014. And so I just bring people around the way that I did in Italy, and bring them to places to eat and this and that. And but then I chose just to open a cafe. So it was kind of a natural decision for me
Mm.
to, after the cafe, be like, okay, maybe I'll go back into food tours, and that's the thing, is that I can move anywhere in the world because there's food everywhere and it's a common language that everybody speaks.
Yeah.
And so, especially doing it in Ireland, where if I tell people, oh, I have a food tour business, and they're like, in Ireland, really? And I'm like, if I can make it work in Ireland, I can make it work anywhere. You just have to find what the gold, in the soil of wherever you're living is, and go by that.
And do you have anything on the horizon that might be different to Italy or Ireland, or is that the fixed ones for now?
I'm actually thinking the Netherlands is my next kind
Oh,
of little
nice.
place that I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to what people, as think of the Irish food scene, where they're like, okay, well, it's a lot of beige food and it's a lot of whatever, but there's such a high rate of immigrants in the Netherlands,
Hmm.
and that brings so much good food, and that might be my angle there as well. But that's always in the back of my mind. But right now, just tours are going so crazy for me here that I'm going to focus on this for the rest of the year anyway.
And just finally, like for your tours, where can people book your tours and where can they find you for social media and websites?
Yeah, so they can book my tours on my website. So that's lowontheroad.com, or the Airbnb. And they can find me. My social media on Instagram is it's low on the road. So ITS low on the road. I have a TikTok, but honestly, I just post a video there, and after a couple days, I I close the TikTok down. I don't love TikTok, but I like it to make videos on.
Yeah.
So Instagram would be the number one, where you can kind of find me and message me and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think TikTok could be good for food, right? It seems to be a cool place like people
Yeah,
to put their
but
food up. I'm not sure. Not an expert.
it is. No, you're right. It is. But for some reason, I don't know. I don't love social media, and social media doesn't love
Same.
me. Sometimes I have one video that got like 150,000 views.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, that's pretty crazy. But that was that was a one-time thing. That was
Yeah.
a one time.
That's with most people. They get
Usually they don't
millions
do
and the
that
next
well.
one's 20, right? They can't
Yeah.
really work it
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Yeah.
But my thing is, if I can make money, make a career out of doing what I love, then for me, it doesn't matter how many views my videos have, because there
Sure.
are people out there that have millions of views, but they're working in a cubicle in their real life. And so for me, it's if it has to be the other way around, then I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I think the broke influencer is real, you know. I think people need to remember that when they see it on
Yeah.
social media for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before we get to my last feature is any travel plans for this year outside of your tours?
Um, yeah, so because my season, it's tour season right now, I don't really plan on traveling probably until so I every winter I go to Edinburgh, I go to the Christmas market. So for sure I'll
Yeah.
do that just for a day or two. I would really love to go to Istanbul in October for my birthday. That's kind of the loose plan, but I am getting bookings for October already, so it kind of
Oh,
depends how
yep.
busy I am. I probably for Christmas will go somewhere lovely. I'd love to go to Scandinavia, but again, everything's kind of got to see what's happening with the tour situation. And I think for sure January and February, I'll do what I did last year, which is last year I went back to Florence. I went back to my old apartment. I've been in touch with my landlord for 15 years, my original landlord, and stayed in my apartment there. And so I won't go to Florence again this January, February, but I will go somewhere, maybe somewhere in Italy, maybe somewhere else. I'm not sure, but I will take a couple months off before the tour season starts up again in March, before Patty's Day.
Oh
I'll go
yeah,
chill out
big.
somewhere for a little while.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
huge, right? Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. I'm going to finish the episode with some quick fire travel questions.
Oh
And
God.
these
Okay.
are just like some of your favorite things that you've seen on your travels the last 15 years or so. So
Okay.
I'm going to kick off with it's travel question time. Your top three favorite countries.
Actually haven't haven't traveled that much to have a top three. I love the Netherlands.
Yeah.
I Berlin is really cool. So Germany was really amazing. And of course, Italy. Is that a cheating answer? Can I say
No, that's
Italy?
great. Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about three countries you've not traveled to? If you can go there tomorrow, no questions asked, where are you going to go?
Okay, so actually, funnily enough, one of them is the United States because my number one place that I want to visit in the world right now is New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
So that's yeah, the US. I'd want to go to Iceland. That'd be really beautiful to go up there.
Yeah.
And Australia.
Dream. Okay.
Always wanted to go to Australia. Always want to go to Australia.
Yeah, I think you have to. It's my dream place.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could live somewhere that you've not lived in before for a year as another country or place, where are you going to live?
To be honest, I think I'd say New Orleans. I just love the witchy vibes. It has a good food scene. I definitely, yeah, I'd have to be there.
Okay. Are you a sunrise or sunset person?
Oh, yeah, sunset. I'm not up early enough to see the sunrise.
That is the most popular answer, can you believe? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think heart, but everyone says sunrise, but the head says nah, sunset.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's be real here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you could sit anywhere in the world with a cup of coffee and watch the world go by, where are you going to sit?
You know what's so funny? I think it's funny because I've thought about this before because, like I said, one of my favorite squares is that one in Tuscany. I've seen, the Scott Monument, the little snow come down in Edinburgh. I've walked on the canal in Amsterdam. I come from a place where there's Rocky Mountains and so much beauty. But my favorite place to sit with a cup of coffee is a little Turkish restaurant here in Dublin called Reina. I sit at the window seat. I actually have a tea instead of a coffee.
Sure.
It's on Dame Street, and I watch the world go by. And that's one of my happy places. If I'm homesick, I actually go there because it's a family restaurant, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of love there. And yeah, actually, I'd say there, funnily enough.
Ah, interesting. Okay. This might be a tough question next. What about top three favorite international cuisines?
Can I say Italy?
Yeah,
Italian.
most people do.
Okay, I'd say Italian and I'd say Japanese. I can eat sushi until the cows come home. And they have so many like ramen and gyoza and all these beautiful things. And right now, yeah, I'm on a turkey kick, so I'd say Turkish.
Okay. Is there a dish you've never tried but you'd love to try?
Off the top of my head, off the top of my head, No, I'd have to probably sit and think about it. Although I'd love a nice big like po' boy. Again, go into the Louisiana thing.
Yeah.
Or I get a lot of clients out from there, and they're talking about the beignets too. So one of these like yummy donut type delicious things.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
What about a favorite landmark? Can be nature or man-made.
Mm. Yeah, I have to say the square again in Piazza della Signoria, just the Loggia where all the statues are. That's just my favorite place in the world.
If you could learn another language fluently, what, which language would it be?
Is it cheating if I say
Yeah, it's
Italian?
cheating. No, you already speak it.
Oh my gosh. I think French is probably the most useful language, but I think I love the sound of Arabic, and I think
Oh
that'd be a
yeah.
really amazing language to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I speak 10 words. That's pretty much about it, but gets you quite far.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah, I went to Middle East last year and just thought I'd give it a go. And people love that you try. Probably the most,
Hmm.
along with Turkey, actually. If you go to Turkey and you speak a bit of Turkish, they absolutely love it.
I find Turkish is such a fast and difficult language. I
It
gave up. I
is.
tried a little bit and I'm like, I can't. Yeah.
I think the effort is applauded. I think for sure.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Has there been a place on your travels that you didn't like?
You know what? I thought Rome was overrated.
Oh wow, crikey,
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was okay. Well, I
bombshell.
just thought it was another big city. And although it's beautiful, Venice I thought wasn't really my cup. But Venice itself was beautiful, but the food I was not impressed with. I'll be honest about that right now.
Wow, that's a couple of bold
Yeah,
answers.
sorry.
Oh, crikey.
Sorry.
Where do I go next?
Yeah.
I've got two questions left. I think I really want to
Yes.
delve back to your first trip abroad. Like, what was the biggest lesson? You might have said it already, but what's the biggest lesson that you learned from traveling solo as a female, sort of like taking that leap?
Yeah, just that I'm yeah, more capable than I thought. And I think it's important for me to also be like, oh, I can be an inspiration to other people, which I never thought that
Mm,
me getting up and doing that was. But some people have said, when I met you, I did this, or I heard you do this, and it inspired me to do this. Like my friend's little brother, he didn't know what he wanted to do with his life, but he knew that he was interested in diving. And I said, why don't you go work on a cruise ship and be a scuba diver instructor? And he's like, oh, it's going to take time. It's going to take whatever. And I said, well, time is going to go by and you're going to be older anyway. So you may as well just, do it. And
mhm.
you're going to waste away at home otherwise. And he went and he did it,
Wow.
and that was really cool. Yeah, to meet people or meet someone and they're afraid to travel. And, I met a guy here in Ireland. He was working in a corner shop. He said, well, I was going to go to Australia for, whatever it was, 4 months, but I don't know, it's scary. All my friends are here, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's 16 Saturday nights. That is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
you know it, it's going to be over. Like, and
Yeah.
then, he ended up going, and that was really cool to be able to say to someone, I'm not just talking shit. I've done it and I've been in your shoes and I've had to be dragged onto a plane to be standing here talking to you right now, but you won't regret it. There's no regret in evolving, there's no regret in, just being more grown up tomorrow than you are today, I think. Not necessarily more mature, but just being like, I'm putting my big girl pants on and I'm going to
Mm,
go do this.
going for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that
Yeah.
kind of leads me to my last question, which might sound a bit of a repeat, but any advice for someone who wants to take that leap or why they should go and travel the world or at least go somewhere different?
If you can imagine yourself as an elderly person in a bed saying, I really wish I would have done that. And if that's a reality that you can see yourself saying something, a regret that you can think of that comes to your mind right now, then you should just go do it. And that's what usually gets me to do something. Am I going to regret this when I'm older? Can I imagine myself? Does something come to mind when I imagine myself in that situation? Because all we get from life is lessons, right? That's the whole point where we're here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of live the same life day in, day out for their whole life. And some people are okay with that. And some people just never took that leap. And I think that You can only get better when you take a risk. Even if you fail, then you learn a lesson and you go, okay, I know what to do or not to do next time. Even for me, opening the cafe, it only lasted 3 years because there was a sublease and it didn't last 10, 20 years. No, it lasted 3 and that's all I needed. Now I'm never doing it again and I don't ever have to think about it again,
Mm-hmm.
So taking the risk and, as they say, being scared and doing it anyway, I'd say that would be the number one thing I'd like to tell people.
Yeah, amazing. The whole work thing is interesting, right? It's amazing that people don't want to take 6 months out because you're going to be working for 40, 50 years, more than likely.
Yeah.
So that's nothing, is it?
Yeah.
To go on a worldwide trip for 6 months and have an amazing time. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you can go out a door and turn left instead of right, and your whole world can change. You just never know. If I hadn't met that girl in Florence that said she lived in Dublin, I would not be talking to you right now.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't talk to her anymore. Like, we're not in touch anymore, but she played such a pivotal role in my life. And doesn't even know about it. Or my cousin's friend at that wedding. He has no idea that I joined a nanny website the next day. He has no idea that he played such a role in my life 15 years ago.
That's interesting, isn't it? That's quite, what the word is, wholesome almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Laura, it's been a great conversation. Super fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you.
Food tours and travel stories are always fun things to talk about because we love food and we love travel. So if people are heading to Dublin, they should hit you up and get on a tour.
And if you ever come back to the UK and you're around Dublin, I know they're not the same thing. Don't let people think that I think they're the same thing. Yeah. If you're ever around Ireland and I'm still in these parts, let me know and come be a guest on my tour.
Absolutely. I will hold you to that and I'll be in Dublin next time. I'll be hitting you up with a tour. I don't know when that'll be. I'm in UK for Christmas though, but whether I make it across the water, I have to see when I haven't booked it yet. Touch. Yeah. So we'll keep in touch for that.
We'll keep in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the podcast episode today. If you've been inspired by today's chat and want to book some travel, if you head to the show notes, you'll see some affiliate links below which help support this podcast. You'll find Skyscanner to book your flight. You'll find booking.com to book that accommodation. Want to stay in a super cool hostel? You'll see Hostelworld down there too. You'll find Revolut to get your travel card sorted. Click the GigSky link to get your eSIM ready for your trip. And more importantly, you'll find Safety Wing Insurance to get that travel insurance for your trip. There are many more to check out, so when you click that link and book your product, a small commission goes towards me and the Winging It Travel podcast. Thank you in advance and enjoy your travels.